Hey, I'm Creech, this is Creech and Cars, and today I'll be giving you a look at the Mazda Iconic SP concept. Mazda's return to the Rotary engine, although the setup isn't completely like what you would expect. I'll show you the exterior design and take you through the interior, and then I'll go over everything we know about the Rotary engine that powers the concept. Finally, I'll talk about what this means for the future of Mazda's sports cars. Let's get into it. Taking a look at the exterior, overall the Iconic SP is somewhere between rounded and angular with a much cleaner design than what has been typical of sports cars in the past decade. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the design, especially from the front and rear quarter angles. I like the grille design here. It takes the normal shape Mazda has been using and adds a sportier touch with the inserted piece that also makes it so the grille isn't a massive gaping hole. The rest of the design is free from hard creases, although you can notice the large bulge forming from the fenders that carries into the hood area. The headlights are thin and sporty LEDs, but they're also pop-ups as well. Here you can see them closed, and I really like how it's hard to tell that something is actually popped up when the headlights are on. Obviously, pop-up headlights are no longer allowed, so this won't make it to any production car, but I think Mazda really did it right with this concept. Coming around to the side, the design is very clean with no visible door handles and the digital side mirrors being tucked away on the A-pillar. The doors open in a swan wing motion similar to an Aston Martin, definitely an exotic touch for a Mazda. I think at this point is also where it becomes apparent that this is a much more timeless design than what Mazda has been putting out over the past 20 years or so. It's clean and simple, but still lets you know immediately that it's a sports car. The gunmetal gray rims feature a 5-spoke design with a thin prominent spoke and then a little fan that comes off of each one. Coming around to the rear, this is the only part of the design that's been a little controversial. I do like it overall, but at some angles the proportions look a little off to me. The rear window has an aggressive slope and visibility is probably not the best, but that's typical of cars in this class. Mazda is spelled out across the back, and it's not just a backlit badge, but the badge itself is a light. The taillights put a twist on the traditional circular look, as it's basically a Venn diagram where the area that both circles cross into is part of the body panel, and the rest of each circle is the lighted portion. The bumper slopes inwards and houses a really unique third brake light design. It's just these two little lines, and I think it flows into the design very well and doesn't look like an add-on forced by regulators. The diffuser below that is interesting as well because it almost looks like an upside down wing with the body colored portion underneath it. Now moving inside, the first thing you'll notice on the door panels is that the body color is carried inside with this trim piece that looks similar to what is done on the current Miata. From there, the interior is largely covered by this navy blue Alcantara, save for a few accents of the exterior's red. The cockpit feels very driver-centric as you sit low in the thin bucket seats. The sporty flat-bottom steering wheel is accented by large silver paddle shifters, and the well-proportioned digital gauge cluster gives you all the information you need and appears to have plenty of adjustability. In addition to that screen, there is a center infotainment screen, roughly the same size as the gauge cluster, with a few physical controls on the center console below that. And that's pretty much all there is to the interior. The AC vent does continue in an unbroken line across the passenger area, but overall it's a very minimalistic interior, which is actually a good thing for this particular model. Minimalism might be a plague in new cars, especially EVs and luxury cars, but for a mainstream sports car, minimalism is the most appropriate design approach. Miatas have always had simple and clean interiors, and this design philosophy also makes you think of past classic sports cars like the Lotus Elise, where a more feature-rich and luxurious interior would feel completely out of place. So the design is interesting and, in my opinion, at least points towards a better future for sports car design, but things get even more interesting as we dig into the mechanical and performance specs. Most importantly, the Iconic SP isn't fully electric, like the vast majority of new concepts being shown off at the Japan Mobility Show and just the majority of new models in general. I would call the Iconic SP a hybrid, as it utilizes a gas engine and an electric motor, but it's not the traditional hybrid setup. Instead, it works more like the Cadillac ELR did, if anyone remembers that car. The ELR was driven completely by an electric motor, but the battery only had about 30 miles of range, so after the range was exhausted, the gas motor would turn on and power the electric motor. As for the iconic SP, it uses a 2-rotor rotary engine that produces about 365 horsepower, which is then supplied to an electric motor or maybe multiple motors. Mazda hasn't specified. Either way, the power output is twice what the current Miata makes, but the iconic SP is about 850 pounds heavier and about 10 inches longer than the Miata. Still, Mazda says the Iconic's unique power setup can give drivers all of the excitement and pure driving joy of a lightweight gas roadster when it's combined with near perfect weight distribution and a lower center of gravity, accomplished by the ability to position the electric motor and battery lower to the ground, as well as the rotary engine, which can be placed lower than a normal piston engine. All in all, Mazda says the iconic SP is able to be virtually carbon neutral without compromising the driving experience that buyers want. So the Mazda iconic SP is just a concept, but what does this mean for the future of the brand? Some people have speculated that the concept is a representation of an upcoming RX-9 model, while others think this is the next generation Miata. I do think it's safe to say this won't be an RX-9 or any other sort of sports car addition to Mazda's lineup. The current car market just doesn't support really any mainstream brand having multiple true sports cars in its lineup. However, it does seem that this concept would have some sort of influence or is a vague look at an upcoming electrified Miata. I think the power setup really makes sense if this is the case, as going fully electric with a car like the Miata is a challenge both in engineering and marketing. The small footprint would make it difficult to squeeze in a large enough battery to give the car decent range, and the driving experience just wouldn't be the same, which would likely turn off many loyal and new potential Miata buyers. Rotary engines make good use of space and would allow the Iconic's layout to be shrunken down to fit into the traditional roadster size. But don't take my word for it. Mazda's chief of design, Masashi Nakayama, said that the iconic SP was enlarged intentionally to make it a better show car, but the model could easily be shrunk down to Miata-like proportions. Masahiro Moro, Mazda's CEO, also said that the Roadster is an icon of Mazda's brand, and the Rotary EV is a concept for the future iconic model. So it does seem like there's a strong possibility that the iconic SP concept will be used as a starting point for the design and engineering of the next generation Miata, although the production version will likely be noticeably different. So there's everything you need to know about the Mazda iconic SP concept, potentially an early look at the Miata of the future. As always, let me know what you think about this concept in the comments below, and do you think this would make a good basis for a new Miata? On this channel, I talk about car news like this, as well as history and culture, so if you like this video, check out the rest of the channel and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.